Photography is an expensive hobby. You know that, I know that. So when it comes to finding good but affordable gear, there's a lot of trash to sift through out there. Is the K&F Polariser filter a good value for money item, or does it belong on the trash pile with all the other cheap junk?
Hi, welcome to another video. Sorry if I look a little bit tired today. I am absolutely wiped out. It's early morning. I've had a massive week and my daughter's teething at the moment, so we've just been waking up through the night and oh man, the coffee hasn't touched me this morning. So it might be a little bit of a low energy video, but that's nice to do that sometimes anyway. So what I wanted to talk about today is the K&F Polariser filter. Now, a few weeks ago, just before autumn, I made a video suggesting that if you haven't got a polarizer filter, that you should get one for your woodland photography. I won't go through the details, but basically, using a polarizer makes leaves look better in autumn. It's a well-known fact, and today I wanted to put my money where my mouth is and do a sort of user review of one that is affordable. Now, if you follow my channel regularly, you'll know that I really put a high value on making photography affordable, but I'm unwilling to compromise on image quality. Basically, if a piece of equipment is really affordable, but it makes your images look rubbish, then I'm not interested in it. Whereas if there's something that's really good value for money, then that is something that I wholeheartedly recommend. So, is this filter something that fits into that category? Now, as a bit of a caveat before this video, K&F have got nothing to do with this video. I've not been paid, there's no promotion or sponsorship or anything. I've bought this filter with my own money so that I can do a completely unbiased review and give you my honest opinion. I've used it quite a lot already, so I have already formed an opinion, but I want to demonstrate today what it can do and if it really is a good value for money filter. So we are actually headed towards a waterfall again this week in the woodland to really demonstrate the capabilities of this filter because first of all, we've got water, which is great with polarizer filters because it takes the reflection off, and we've got lots of leaves around, so it's a good location for testing it out. And this used to be the home of the tallest tree in the UK. Unfortunately, it blew down in a storm, but they got a professional wood carver in to carve a shape into it. It's just at the path here. Let me show you what they did with this tree. So this is a good test of how much chromatic aberration there is. It's a really cool tree. They've done such an awesome job of carving it to look like an actual human hand. They've got the grooves and everything just perfect. But the reason this is good for testing if it adds chromatic aberration is because I know this zoom lens that it fits on, it doesn't have any chromatic aberration whatsoever. It's a really sharp lens. So I've stopped down a little bit as well so that it's in its sharpest point. And I know that any softness around the edges or chromatic aberration will be caused by the filter. Now, getting the composition right with this tree is really hard because there's a very messy background. I've purposely come round to where there's quite a few bright spots behind it. When you've got a really high dynamic range like you have here, a dark edge against a bright sky can cause chromatic aberration if you use a cheap filter. So I'll take the filter off now and we'll test it against the standard lens as it is.
So here we are a couple of days later. I've edited these photos. Let's have a look if the filter has caused any chromatic aberration. So here you can see I've got the two pictures side by side. On the left, we've got the one with the filter. On the right, we've got the one without the filter. As you can tell, there's not really much difference between the two at the moment. The leaves here weren't particularly reflective, which means that the filter didn't remove any reflections. But there's still a little bit more saturation in this picture, which is what we want. You'll see in a bit though what a difference it makes when you do have shiny leaves. We'll come on to that later on in the video. But in this test here, let's compare the two images and see if there's any chromatic aberration. So first, the one without the filter. Let's look at this one. So as you can see at the edge of the frame here, there's a little bit of softness, but that's more about where I focused, I think. I focused on this side of the hand. There's not many bright spots on this side, so it's hard to compare. So this is ever so slightly soft because it's out of focus, but there's no chromatic aberration whatsoever. I knew it wouldn't be because this lens is really sharp, I know that. And let's see what the filter was like now. If you look here, again, no chromatic aberration. Once again, it's soft because of where it focused, but if we compare the bottom halves of the pictures, as you can see, they're both really sharp. Now you might not be able to see this at home or on YouTube, but here on my monitor, which is calibrated for editing photos, and you get really crisp, sharp and true colours. I can see there's an ever so slightly blue cast on the bright whites here. Now they're blown out highlights. I don't particularly care about that. And it's ever so slight. It can be edited out by changing the temperature, adjusting the whites of the picture. But if you add a filter, unless you get the super expensive one, there will be a slight color cast on some polarizing filters. But it's completely acceptable in my opinion. You wouldn't notice it. Somebody wouldn't look at this picture if they didn't know it had a filter and think, oh, that's a polarizing filter, that one, it's ruined the picture. Nobody would think that if I hadn't pointed it out. I reckon if I hadn't pointed out in this video, you wouldn't have been able to tell at home because of YouTube compression and that sort of thing. But as you can see, the filter doesn't affect the sharpness of the picture at all. They're both really sharp pictures of this hand, and even if you were to print this on an A2 piece of paper, you wouldn't be able to say that the filter had caused any softness in the picture whatsoever. So that's a really good thing. That's the main test that we want to do to make sure that it's not going to ruin any images we take. But now we want to see if it really can improve the images that we take, especially when it comes to colours.
So I've had a little look around and I think we found our best composition here. We've got this raging waterfall because of all the rainfall we've had over the last couple of weeks. And just above it, there's a lovely golden tree in amongst all the ferns that are still green. It really makes that tree pop and stand out. And this is a perfect situation for testing the polarizer filter. You've got reflections on the water, you've got beautiful colours in the trees, and I think this has got potential to be a very good photo. Just cleaning up the polarizer a little bit before I stick it on the front of my 18-55. I think this is going to be a wide angle shot, but this will show the capabilities of a polarizer filter with drawing out colour and with taking reflections off water, so that I know I'm not going to make any mistakes and introduce any human error. I'm going to leave the camera settings exactly the same for with the polarizer and without the polarizer. The only thing that will be different is shutter speed, because polarizers drop the exposure by 1 or 2 stops depending on how much you turn it, but I'll keep the aperture and the ISO the same, and I'm using a tripod so that camera shake isn't an issue. My big oafish hands won't make any problems for comparing the two images then. So first, let's take a picture of it without the polarizer. Let me just line up the composition properly. And now let's take the exact same shot with the polarizer turned so that it polarizes mainly the tree and then the water. Right, let's get them back in Lightroom and see how they look.
So I'm really happy with how these pictures turned out. I can't believe that I found this one tree that was just turning and everything else was still green around it. It worked out really perfect for testing this filter as well. As you can see, I've edited these photos a little bit. I've had a little sun flare to make the subject really stand out. I've changed the colour of the water as well. Originally, the water was really brown and dirty, as you can see there. It didn't look nice, so I've just cooled it down a little bit and taken away the saturation, so the water just looks a little bit cleaner. I've reduced the saturation of the greens a little bit as well because they're really intense. But other than that, I haven't done a lot to edit this photo at all. And I've done the same edits on both so that they can be a fair comparison. Now, when it comes to the filter, as you'll be able to see, On first glance, you might not be able to notice much of a difference, but it's when you look closely that you really see the difference a polarizer filter can make. So this one on the left here, this is the one that was without the polarizer filter. If we zoom in on the leaves that were catching some light here, they were slightly out of focus because I had a wide aperture. But you can see there's really bright spots there, and that's really distracting on the edge of your frame, having those bright leaves. When I zoom out again, now you'll be able to see them, that they're just bright on the side of the frame. Whereas this one, the polarizer filter cuts almost all the reflections off those leaves. That means you get a much deeper green color, and it's much less distracting because there's no bright spots on that side as well. So a good example of how the polarizer filter works. You would expect it to do that though, because what's the point of a polarizer filter that doesn't cut reflections? You'll notice as well that in the water, it's a bit difficult to see here because you can't see through the water because of the movement in it, but it's good at cutting reflections off water and wet rocks as well, so the rocks look a lot flatter. And most importantly, when it comes to woodland photography, if we zoom in on the main subject of this, so let's zoom in on the tree on this side, you can see those colours there, they look nice, there's some intensity to them, but if we zoom in on the one that was polarised, you can see there that hopefully YouTube hasn't compressed it too much, and you can see that there's a much deeper colour. You see these leaves here, some of these yellow ones were quite bright and the saturation was taken away from them, but because we had the polarizer filter on this one, the yellows are much deeper and a much richer colour. So the polarizing filter has indeed made this a better photo, in my opinion. I do want your opinion on something though. Do you think that this composition is better, or the one I took of just the subject itself? Because I really like simplifying my images. Now I think that the one with the waterfall is a good image because it's simple. You've only got two elements, the waterfall and the bright tree. It makes a leading line up to the tree, which I think is quite effective. But I also really like this one of just the subject as well, because it's even simpler again. Maybe you think that they're both good images in their own right, and they could be included in some sort of set. That's what my gut tells me. But let me know what you think down in the comments. Now, as for my verdict on the K&F K-Series polarizing filter, I think it's a very good filter for the money. It's really good value for money. It polarizes great, doesn't cause any softness, causes ever so slight color cast if you look closely at your pictures, but not one that would really be noticeable to anybody unless you pointed it out to them. So I think it's a very good option if you do want a polarizer filter for a good price. I do want to caveat that though. If you're using really top-end gear, like professional lenses, L-series lenses on the Canon, for example, then you really should be buying a much more expensive filter. The gear I use matches the K&F polarizing filter. It's not top-end, it's good quality. I'm unwilling to use gear that isn't good quality, but it's not the best that you can buy. I think the polarizer filter matches that K&S polarizer filter. It's really good quality and it can improve your images, but it's not the best you can buy. If you're going to be buying top-end gear, then you should be buying a top-end filter. Your gear is only as good as its weakest link. So if you're using expensive camera, expensive lens, cheap filter, then you're effectively making it a cheap setup because at the weakest link it fails. Whereas if you're using good quality but affordable camera, good quality but affordable lens, and a good quality but affordable filter, then it all matches, which in this case it does for me. So I hope that makes sense, and I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you haven't liked it and it's been helpful, please press the thumbs up button because it helps other people to find it as well. You can help other people by liking this video, and of course it helps me as well if you feel like you want to help me out, helps it to reach other people. If you want to watch a video where I talk about why using a polarizer filter is so important in woodland photography, then watch this video here, and I'll see you next time.